Hello viewers, I Nilofar Zargam from Jamia Millia Islamia University welcomes you again to a new episode on the elasticity of demand. In this episode, we shall discuss meaning of elasticity of demand, meaning of price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand for different goods varies a good deal. Determinants and importance of price elasticity of demand. We'll also discuss cross and income elasticity of demand. Let's see elasticity of demand. When the price of good falls, its quantity demanded rises, and when the price of it rises, its quantity demanded falls. It is known as a law of demand. This indicates only the direction of change in quantity demanded in response to a change in price. This does not tell us by how much or by to what extent the quantity demanded of a good will change in response to a change in its price. Price elasticity of demand is usually referred to as elasticity of demand. But besides price elasticity of demand, there are various other concepts of demand elasticity. Demand for a good is determined by its price, incomes of the people, prices of the related goods, etc. Quantity demanded of a good will change as a result of change in any of these determinants of demand. The concept of elasticity of demand thus refers to the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good to a change in its price, consumers' income and prices of related goods. Accordingly, there are three concepts of demand elasticity: price elasticity, income elasticity, and cross elasticity. Price elasticity of demand relates to the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good to the change in consumers' its price. Income elasticity of demand refers to the sensitiveness of quantity demanded to the change in income. Cross elasticity of demand means that the degree of responsiveness of demand of a good to a change in the price of a related good, which may be either a substitute for it or a complementary with it. The concept of elasticity has a very great importance in economic theory as well as for formulation of suitable economic policies. Price elasticity of demand expresses the response of quantity demanded of a good change in its price given the consumer's income, his taste, and prices of all other goods. In other words, it is measured as percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in the price, other things remaining equal. That is, EP is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in the price. So, EP is equal to delta Q by Q times delta P by P. Marshall, who introduced the concept of elasticity into economic theory, remarks that the elasticity or responsiveness of demand in a market is great or small according as the amount demanded increases much or little for a given fall in price and diminishes much or little for a given rise in price. This will be clear from figure 1 and 2, which represents two demand curves. For a given fall in price from OP to OP dash, increase in quantity demanded is much greater in figure 1 than in figure 2. Therefore, demand curve in figure 1 is more elastic than the demand curve in figure 2 for a given fall in price for the portion of the demand curves considered. Demand for the good represented in figure 1 is generally said to be elastic and the demand for the good in figure 2 to be inelastic. The term elastic and inelastic are used in a relative sense. Either elasticity is a matter of degree only, demand for some goods is only more or less elastic than others. Thus, when we say that demand for good is elastic, we mean only that the demand for it is relatively more elastic. Such as, when we say that the demand for a good is elastic, we do not mean that its demand is absolutely inelastic, but only that it is relatively less elastic. Demand for a good is said to be elastic if the price elasticity of the demand for it is greater than 1. Similarly, the demand for a good is called inelastic if the price elasticity of demand for it is less than 1. Price elasticity of demand equal to 1, or in other words, unit elasticity of demand therefore represents the dividing line between elastic and inelastic demand. It will now be clear that by inelastic demand, we do not mean perfectly inelastic, but only that the elasticity of demand is less than unity. And by elastic demand, we do not mean absolutely elastic, but that the elasticity of demand is greater than 1. Thus, elastic demand, that is, EP is greater than 1, in inelastic demand, EP is lesser than 1, and unitary elastic demand means EP is equal to 1. Price elasticity of demand for different goods varies a good deal. Some goods like common salt, wheat and rice are very unresponsive to the changes in their price. The demand for salt remains practically the same for a small rise or fall in its price. Thus, the demand for common salt is said to be inelastic. Demand for goods like radios, refrigerators, etc. is elastic since changes in their prices bring about large changes in their quantity demanded. I'll confirm here to say that the main reason for differences in elasticity of demand is the possibility of substitution, that is, the presence or absence of competing substitutes. Goods are demanded due to satisfy some particular wants, and in general, wants can be satisfied in the variety of alternative ways. For example, the want for entertainment can be pleased by having television set, or by possessing a gramophone, or by going to cinemas, or by visiting theatres. If the price of a television set falls, the quantity demanded of it will rise greatly, since fall in its price will induce some people to buy this in place of having gramophones or visiting cinemas and theatres. Thus, the demand for television is inelastic. Similarly, if the price of Dove falls, its demand will greatly rise because it will substitute it for other varieties of soaps such as Vivel, Hammam, Godrej, Pears, etc. On the other hand, the demand for necessary good like salt is inelastic. The demand for salt is inelastic since it satisfies a basic human want and no substitute for it are available. People would consume almost the same quantity of salt whether it becomes slightly cheaper or dearer than before. Now, let's see the determinants of price elasticity of demand. The following are the main factors which determine price elasticity of demand for a commodity. The availability of substitute. The availability of number and kinds of substitute for a commodity is a most important factor. If for a commodity close substitutes are available, its demand tends to be elastic. If the price of such a commodity goes up, the people will shift to its close substitute, and as a result, the demand for that commodity will greatly decline. The greater the possibility of substitute it, the greater the price elasticity of demand for it. If for a commodity substitutes are not available, people will have to buy it even when its price rises, and therefore its demands would tend to be inelastic. If a price of a thumbs up were to increase sharply, many customers would turn to other kinds of cold drinks, and as a result the quantity demanded of thumbs up will decline very much. On the other hand, if the price of thumbs up falls, many consumers will change from other cold drinks to thumbs up. Thus, the demand for thumbs up is elastic. It is the availability of close substitutes that makes the consumer sensitive to the changes in the price of thumbs up, and this makes the demand for thumbs ups elastic. Similarly, demand for common salt is inelastic because good substitutes for common salt are not available. If the price of common salt rises slightly, the people would consume almost the same quantity of salt as before, since good substitutes are not available. The demand for a common salt is inelastic also because people spend a very little part of their income on it, and even if its price rises, it makes only negligible difference in the budget allocation for the salt. Position of a commodity in a consumer budget. The greater the proportion of income spent on a commodity, the greater will be generally its elasticity of demand, and vice versa. The demand for goods like common salt, matches, buttons, etc. tend to be highly inelastic because a household spends only a fraction of their income on each of them. On the other hand, the demand for goods like clothing tends to be elastic since households generally spend a good part of their income on clothing. Next, number of uses to which a commodity can be put. The more the possible uses of a commodity, the greater will be its price elasticity, and vice versa. To illustrate, milk has several uses. If its price falls, it can be used for a variety of purposes like preparation of curd, cream, ghee, and sweets. But if its prices increases, its uses will be restricted only to essential purposes like feeding the children and sick persons. The period. Next is the period. The longer the time period one has, the more completely one can adjust. A homely example of the effect can be seen in motoring habits. In response to higher petrol price, one can in the short run make fewer trips by the car. In the long run, not only can one make fewer trips, but he can purchase a car with a smaller engine capacity when the time comes for replacing the existing one. Hence, one's demand for petrol falls by more when one has made long-term adjustment to the higher prices. Next is consumer habits. If a consumer is habitual consumer of a commodity, no matter how much its price change, the demand for the commodity will be inelastic. Next is tied demand. The demand for those goods which are tied to others is normally inelastic as against those whose demand is of autonomous nature. Price range. Goods which are in a very high range or in a very low price range have inelastic demand, but those in the middle range have elastic demand. The concept of price elasticity is also important in judging the effect of devaluation of a currency on its export and earnings. It has also a great use in fiscal policy because the finance minister has to keep in view the elasticity of demand when it considers to impose taxes on various commodities. We shall explain below the various uses, applications, and importance of elasticity of demand. First one, pricing decision by business firm. The business firms take into account the price elasticity of demand when they take decision regarding pricings of the goods. This is because change in the price of a product will bring about a change in the quantity demanded depending upon the coefficient of price elasticity. This change in quantity demanded as a result of, say, a rise in price by a firm will affect the total consumer's expenditure and will therefore affect the revenue of the firm. If the demand for a product of a firm happens to be elastic, then any attempt on the part of the firm to raise the price of its product will bring about a fall in its total revenue. Thus, instead of gaining from the increase in the price, it will lose if the demand for its product happens to be elastic. On the other hand, if the demand for the product of a firm happens to be inelastic, then the increase in price by it will raise its total revenue. Therefore, for fixing a profit maximizing price, the firm cannot ignore the price elasticity of demand for its product. Next is explanation of the paradox of plenty. The concept of price elasticity of demand also help us to explain the so-called paradox of plenty in agriculture, namely that a bumper crop reaped by the farmers bring a smaller total income to them. The fall in the income or the revenue of the farmers as a result of the bumper crop is due to the fact that with a greater supply, the prices of the crops decline drastically, and in the context of inelastic demand for them, the total expenditure on the crop output declines, bringing about fall in the incomes of the farmer. Thus, the bumper crop, instead of raising their incomes, reduces them. Therefore, in order to ensure that the farmer do not lose their incentives to raise their production, they need to be assured certain minimum price by the government. That entire minimum price, the government should be prepared to buy the crop from the farmers. Let's see the next one, that is cross elasticity of demand. The cross elasticity of demand is the percentage change in the quantity demanded of a commodity X as a result of a percentage change in the price of some related commodity Y. Therefore, coefficient of cross elasticity of demand of X for Y is equal to percentage change in the quantity demanded of X divided by percentage change in the price of good Y. So, EC is equal to delta Qx by Qx plus delta Py by Py. So, that is equal to delta Qx by delta Py times Py by Qx. Now, let's see substitute and complementary goods. When two goods are substitutes each other, then as a result of the rise in the price of one good, the quantity demanded of the other good increases. Therefore, the cross elasticity of demand between the two substitute goods is positive. That is, in response to the rise in the price of one good, the demand for the other good rises. Substitute goods are also known as competing goods, while when the two goods are complementary with each other, just as bread and butter, tea and milk, etc., the rise in price of one good bring about a decrease in demand for the other. Therefore, the cross elasticity of demand between the two complementary goods is negative. According to the classification based on the concept of cross elasticity of demand, goods X and Y are substitutes or complements according as the cross elasticity of demand is positive or negative. Now, let's see the next one, that is income elasticity of demand. Another important concept of elasticity of demand is income elasticity of demand. It shows the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good to a small change in the income of consumers. The degree of response of quantity demanded to a change in income is measured by dividing the proportionate change in quantity demanded by the proportionate change in income. Thus, more precisely, the income elasticity of demand may be defined as a ratio of the percentage change in the purchase of good to a percentage change in the income which induces the former. So, income elasticity is equal to percentage change in purchase of good divided by percentage change in income. Let Y stand for an initial income, delta Y for a small change in income, small q for the initial quantity purchased, delta q for a change in quantity purchased as a result of change in income, that is for income elasticity of demand. Then EI is equal to delta q by q times 100 divided by delta y by y times 100, that is equal to delta q by q divided by delta y by y. So, that is equal to delta q divided by delta y times y by q. When change in income and quantity demanded are large, midpoint method should be used to measure percentage changes in income and quantity demanded. The midpoint method of measuring income elasticity of demand can be stated as EI is equal to Q2 minus Q1 divided by Q1 plus Q2 by 2, the whole thing is divided by Y2 minus Y1 divided by Y1 plus Y2 by 2. So, that is equal to delta Q divided by Q1 plus Q2 the whole thing is divided by Y1 plus Y2 divided by delta Y. So, this gives us delta Q divided by delta Y times Y1 plus Y2 divided by Q1 plus Q2. Income elasticity of demand being 0 is of greater significance. Zero income elasticity of demand for a good implies that a given increase in income does not at all lead to an increase in quantity demanded of a good or expenditure on it. In other words, zero income elasticity signifies that quantity demanded of the good is quite unresponsive to changes in income. So, next one, income elasticity, normal good and inferior goods. Besides, zero income elasticity is significant because it represents dividing line between positive income elasticity on the side and negative income elasticity on the other side. On the one side, when income elasticity is more than 0, that is positive, then an increase in income leads to the increase in quantity demanded of the good. This happens in case of normal goods. On the other side of zero income elasticity are those goods which income elasticity is less than 0, that is negative, and in such cases increase in income will lead to the fall in quantity demanded of the goods. Goods having negative income elasticity are known as inferior goods. Goods with positive income elasticity are called as normal goods. We thus see that the zero income elasticity is a significant value, for it helps us to distinguish between normal goods from inferior goods. Next, income elasticity, luxuries and necessities. When income elasticity of demand for a good is equal to 1, then proportion of income spent on the good remains the same as the consumer's income increases. Income elasticity of unity also represents a useful dividing line. If income elasticity for a good is greater than 1, the proportion of consumer's income on the good rises as consumer's income increases. That is, that good bulks larger in consumer's expenditure as he becomes richer. On the other hand, if the income elasticity for a good is less than 1, the proportion of consumer's income spent on it falls as his income rises. That is, the good becomes relatively less important in consumer's expenditure as his income rises. A good having income elasticity more than 1, which therefore bulks larger in consumer's budget as he becomes richer, is called a luxury. A good with an income elasticity less than 1 and which claims declining proportion of consumer's income as he becomes richer is called a necessity. It should, however, be noted that his definitions of luxuries and necessities on the basis of income elasticity may not conform to their definitions in English dictionary, because the dictionary's luxuries may be necessities and its necessities may be the luxuries according to the above definition. But in economic theory, it is useful to call the goods with income elasticity greater than 1 as luxuries and goods with income elasticity less than 1 as necessities. Importance of income elasticity for business firm. If for a firm's product income elasticity of demand is greater than 1, it means that it will gain more than proportionality to increase in the national income. Thus, firms which are producing products having high income elasticity are more interested in forecasting the level of aggregate economic activity, that is, level of national income, because of the demand for their products will greatly depend on the level of overall activity. Further, as seen above, the demand for luxuries is highly income elastic. Therefore, the demand for luxuries fluctuate very much during different phases of business cycle. During boom periods, our demand for luxuries increases very much and declines sharply during recessionary periods. On the other hand, the demand for products with low income elasticity will not be greatly affected by the fluctuation in aggregate economic activity. During booms, the demand for the products will not increase much, and during recessions, it will not decrease sharply. Therefore, the future business activity, remember, it is generally necessities for which demand is not much income elastic. However, there is one good thing for the firms which face low income elasticity. They are, to a good extent, recession proof. In the period of recession, their incomes do not fall to the extent of decline in aggregate income. Of course, to share the benefits of increasing national income currently, reducing products with low income elasticity would try to enter the industries demand for whose product is highly income elastic, as this would ensure better growth opportunities. The concept of income elasticity of demand shows clearly why farmers' income do not rise equal to that of urban people engaged in manufacturing industries. Income elasticity of demand for agriculture products such as food grains is less than 1. This implies that it is difficult for the farmers' income from agriculture to increase in proportion to the expanding national income. This farmer cannot keep up with the urban people who derive their incomes from industries producing goods with high income elasticity of demand. So finally, we have reached the end of today's chapter of elasticity of demand. Let's quickly revise what we have learned today. In today's session, we have discussed its meaning, kinds of elasticity of demand such as price elasticity of demand, cross elasticity of demand, and income elasticity of demand. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. We are ending here the chapter of elasticity of demand, and we'll see you again discussing about our next topic. Till then, have a great time. Thank you and bye.